Hi everybody, welcome back to part 4 of this Hyperrealism drawing series. I hope you guys are liking it. In the last video I was working on the rocks, and as you can see I've gotten quite a few of them done. I still have maybe twice as many rocks to go, but in this video I'm going to be transitioning more into doing the background, getting the back all done. It's just going to be pure black, as you can see. Here I'm just using a cotton ball with my charcoal powder. I find that spreads the charcoal a little bit more evenly as a base layer before I go over it with my actual charcoal stick. So I do end up spending quite a bit of time just filling in the background. It's kind of surprising how much time it actually takes. I think I spent at least an hour just filling in all of the background just to get it nice and crispy black without any white showing through. It definitely takes a lot of time. And for anybody wondering what kind of charcoal I'm using the Faber-Castell pit charcoal, compressed charcoal. I find that works really well. It's kind of the darkest, deepest charcoal that I found. I've used quite a few other ones, but I find this one is the most consistent to be very dark and very black and spreads very easily. I've tried a few of the other ones like Artist Loft and General and Derwent, and I just find their charcoal is a little bit more gray. It doesn't get that pure dark black that I like, and what I prefer is having as much contrast as I can between the subject and the background. So the darker the background that I can get, the better. So after a few years of trying different charcoal, different pencils, just figuring out what works best for me, I've come to the Faber-Castell one, and so far it's my favorite. So I don't think I'm going to talk as much in this one for the voiceover. I think I'll mostly just let it play out with some music. I'll come back in a little bit later when I start working on the flower, so I can kind of explain what I'm doing with that. But yeah, I hope you guys are liking this series. It's something new to me, so hopefully you guys find it interesting. There'll probably be maybe three more parts to this until the picture is done. So I'll probably have the next one up in maybe 3-4 days. So let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in a little bit. and I'm back. I have to say I was getting pretty tired of working on the background, just having charcoal fly everywhere, all over the floor, breathing a little bit of it in, which is probably not great for the lungs. Also not paying attention and touching your face, and then you've got marks all over your face, hands just covered in charcoal. So I'm always happy to have most of it done and I can start working on the next bit. So here for the flower, it's an orchid. I'm pretty much just outlining it, making sure the outline is nice and bold so I can see it very easily. And then because the orchid is white, I'm not using much actual pencil or charcoal to pencil to fill it in. I'm doing the majority of it with just paintbrushes. I'm using a paintbrush, and I also use Q-tips as well, but right now I'm using a paintbrush because it's nice and soft, so I can add a little bit of color to it, a little bit of tone, but keeping it very light and keeping it from getting marks, like pencil marks. If I were to use charcoal or even like too much graphite, I do use a little bit of graphite, but then I move away from it, and I just end up doing the vast majority with just the paintbrushes and using the kneaded eraser, because flowers are very soft. The petals are very soft. I don't want any harsh lines. I want everything to look soft. And that's the effect I can get with a paintbrush. I get something nice and soft, no harsh lines. I'm only using the pencil for areas that I know are pretty dark, so in some of the shadowed areas, and that's pretty much it. And then towards the center of the flower, that's a little bit darker. Pretty much everything else, I'm just using the paintbrushes to get something very soft and very smooth. And when you finally get it pretty smooth, and you have to get the majority of the flower and all the flower petals, whatever area you're working on, you want to get it to kind of the tone that you want it to be. All of these flowers, pretty much all flowers and flower petals, they have different creases and little veins and stuff that run through the flower petal. So you want to get the majority of it the right tone, and then all of the highlights you can take out with a kneaded eraser, or you can use a very small mono eraser, something very skinny, to get any of the fine lines and the fine details. But I find with something like this, because it is white and I don't have to add too much pencil to it, or too much charcoal or too much graphite or anything like that, I know that a kneaded eraser will be able to take everything out and get it nice and white without a risk of it not getting as light as what I would hope if it was a darker area and I was using actual pencil pressure as well, because that will get it into the tooth of the paper a lot more, and it'll be a lot harder to get it out, versus if you use a paintbrush or something soft, it stays a lot more on the surface and you can take it out a little bit easier. And you can use different paintbrushes. I use a few different types. I have a lot wider of one for wider areas. I have this one, it's kind of my medium soft paintbrush, and then I have a little flat tipped one that I can get some straighter lines, sharper lines with. So it's good to have a variety, and you kind of play around with it to figure out what works best for different situations, and you just continue on from there. So, but like with anything, it does take a lot of time, and with this, it's about layering. So you do, even with the paintbrush, you do a fine layer or a soft layer that's very light, and then you go over it again, make it a little bit darker, and you just build layer after layer after layer until you get kind of the right tones in the right places, and then you can bring out some more depth with a pencil, or you can use the kneaded eraser to pull out some more highlights, and you just kind of play around with it. Like just this little flower, it's only maybe 2 inches by 2 inches or something like that, but it took me about 2 hours just to get this one flower done. And you can be a little bit more experimental with paintbrushes too, especially with stuff like this. You don't have to worry too much about making a small mistake because it's so soft. It really doesn't push the charcoal or the graphite very deep into the tooth, so you can really get away with a lot and pull it out with a kneaded eraser. So sometimes you can kind of go a little too far or go over the line into a different area, and you can erase it with a kneaded eraser with almost no problem at all. Actually, now that I think about it, it might have been even closer to 3 hours that I spent just working on this flower. So it, like with anything with this, it's very time consuming just to get it as close to what you want. And also the detail level will kind of be influenced by what kind of paper you're using. So like this paper here, it's a little bit rougher than some of the other paper I often use. So when I'm doing these flower petals, I can get it very soft, but you know, you're not going to be able to get it like silky soft as if you're using a very smooth paper. You can only get it so smooth, and that's fine. It's normal not to have it so accurate to make it look like a silky flower petal. You can only get so far, and that's fine. It just kind of it's a give and take with the type of paper that you use. Like for example, it'll be very detailed, but when you look super close, you can tell that it's on paper and it has some uneven texture to it. It's textured. If you want your piece to be extremely smooth, then you would probably have to get a much smoother paper. Like I do like a little bit of texture. I don't find the texture really takes away. It just makes you realize when you get close, like, oh, it is a drawing and it is artwork. It's done by hand. So whenever I want to do something that is extremely detailed, especially if it's a smaller piece, anything under like 18 by 24 inches, I always do a very smooth paper just because I can get that little bit of extra detail into it. But if I'm doing a much larger piece, I'm okay with losing just that little tiny bit of detail, just so that my medium goes on a little bit easier and it's a little bit easier to work with. But that's not to say that you can't do something very detailed and something very realistic on rough paper. There's people that you can do something extremely detailed on canvas. So it's just how much time you want to put into it and how much time you want to try and get that last little bit of smoothness or that last little bit of detail into it as well. So for me, this paper is kind of like a happy medium between the two, especially when I'm doing a little bit larger pieces. This one isn't a huge piece, it's 22 by 28 inches, but it is definitely on the larger side. I find for me anything under or 24 by 18 or less, I consider it kind of a smaller piece, and then anything over 20 by 30 I consider it a larger piece. But that's just how I categorize it for myself. But for other people, when you guys are drawing, that's why I also recommend the Strathmore 400 series paper. You can find it pretty smooth, and you can find it in like 18 by 24 inch sheets, and you can get some pretty crazy level of detail in it because it is a smoother paper. Anyway, so we're coming to the end of this one. I don't quite get it completely finished in this episode. You'll see it, the flower, totally finished in the next one, but I get 90% of the way. Thought I wasn't going to talk very much, but I guess I did talk through quite a bit of it. Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. And stay tuned for the next video. Should be coming out later this week. Thanks for watching. Bye.